want to talk to y'all today about one of the biggest problems I see in the world: loneliness. This is a problem that I think is getting worse and worse, and we're starting to see almost a silent
Depression
epidemic.
is the
real challenge with loneliness is that a lot of people who are lonely will try really hard to no longer be lonely. They'll do everything from watching like YouTube videos and stuff like that, right, to stuff like taking courses, and they'll even try to do things like just go out there and meet people. And the real troubling thing is
Dopamine. It isn't just a reward system in our brains, but it also affects memory, mood, sleep, learning, concentration, movement, and other body functions. Because we are exposed to endless amounts of it, everything else seems a little more dull. Which explains why depression and anxiety is virtually everywhere. But since most of it is not diagnosed, or even if it is, social media use either doesn't raise enough concern, or is suddenly the CEOs of social media getting interrogated by the Senate.
What does yada, yada, yada mean?
There's no way this is real. There's gotta be more pressing issues. But because of this, we have constant swaying between whether or not we should just stop using it. But hear me out. What if I told you that we could use it in moderation? Despite the pretty bad rep we anime fans get, there are actually endless amounts of works that promote a better lifestyle for people. It also influences them to be better, and in recent times, these three have undoubtedly taken over in terms of the face of optimism. And the reason why this is so important and why it's a trend is because of the time that we're currently in. We just came out of a pandemic, politics are more divisive than any anime argument, and it's an economic disaster. It's a weird era to say the least, but these works remind us to have the right mindset, to become better, and to even influence change for others. Ooh, we want escapism! Of course, anytime I bring this up, escapism is gonna be the first argument. And as someone who watches anime so much I want to turn it into a career, I get it. When I get home from a long day at work or school, it really is nice to sit back and be taken to these different worlds, luckily without actually being in them. But when it's written well, I am invested more than anything, and everything else around me seems to disappear. Now, when I'm not watching escapism anime or reading said manga, I notice what's around me far too well. It's eye-opening, and many times it does suck because as much as I want to, I can't just book a plane ticket and fly away. But the point is, I still take the advice and I use it as hope for the future. Whether it's from YouTube or something else, I'm determined to not spend my life stuck. And of course, there's nothing to guarantee it, and that's also my mindset, but when works describe this, I appreciate it more than anything. Because for one, the work is just really good, but two, it has a message that can actually change the trajectory of my life and others. And that is what anime and manga is all about. It's why it's so important to me. Because as much as it can take me away to these endless other worlds, it's nice to be reminded of the one that I'm currently sitting in. Now you might be wondering, but why is it these characters who have taken over? And besides the obvious fact that they're just well written, what stands out to me is that they are flawed, even terrible people who become better. Not just overnight, but it actually takes time and constant lessons and constant mistakes just for them to finally get the point. It's the same way it works for us. These works also know how to trick our edgy I'm 13 and this is deep brains into following a dope swordsman or a bad student. Because in all honesty, at first, we just think that they're cool, but then we really find out what the message was later on. And it's no surprise that Vinland Saga took the internet by storm in the past year, because it's a story that revolved around a badass main character who would annihilate armies, and he now advocated for peace.
I don't want peace. I want problems.
It's the same essence of Berserk, Vagabond, and The Climber, where each of these characters were nowhere near perfect, but what they all achieved was to simply keep on going. And by simply living, their goals were realized. Now, as much as I could keep going on about the positives, there is a truth I'm leaving out, and that is that I love sad shit. In fact, I find comfort in the saddest works. Some of my favorite all-time works, like A Silent Voice or Death Parade or Welcome to the NHK, all have one thing in common.
I am going to commit suicide!
And most of the time I prefer those darker works, not just because they're dark, but they're written so well in topics that most people are afraid to approach. Now, am I a masochist? We don't need to talk about that. But I also just look at these works not very different as I look at the positive ones. Yes, there are moments that get extremely dark in both, but they also both remind you that life is still worth living, or it shows you the regret of what you miss out on once it's no longer there. Yeah, I know some don't do either, okay? I've read Goodnight Pum Pum, I made a video on it. But besides that, I see it as a buildup of life. The works that remind you to just try, and then the works that remind you to be a better person, and then the works that simply remind you to have fun. It's all important, and I want to make it clear that no matter who you are or what works you like, that it is important to consume media. It's not just a part of our society anymore, but it's part of our learning experience. Of course, it depends on your age, but I primarily speak to young adults and older that it's all about being responsible. Even in these tragic cases of parents losing their kids to social media, quote unquote, they have to realize that it's not because of social media, but it's because there are some terrible people in the world that just unluckily have access to social media. Hell, even on my channels, I've gotten some really personal hate, and I'm lucky enough to have grown to accept it as part of making videos, but I get how detrimental this could be to kids. So in other words, there is no one answer, but one thing I can say is just promote control when it comes to using it. Most of us may be lucky enough to not be directly involved in wars like generations of the past, but we're experiencing higher and easier access to dopamine than any generations of the past. Well, besides whichever one used drugs the most. But it's up to us to try to control it or even use it for good, because this is a struggle that is still not figured out to this day. I made a similar video in the past, and I want you guys to keep in mind that most creators won't remind you that they're creators. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm extremely woke or above these other, YouTubers. My point is that I use media to actually try to make a career out of it. And you don't necessarily have to, but if you are or aren't, just try to control things, because it is easy to get stuck. And I mean, nowadays there are endless loops, especially on TikTok, that I'll be scrolling through and then realize it's hours later. So nothing will always go as planned, but it's possible to keep some of it under control. And with that, that's about it for the video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I might see you in the next one. I did say that was it for the video, but I wanted to do something consistent for this channel, and uploading isn't that clearly. My schedule is terrible, but I can do in-person outros starting now, and eventually I might be able to make like an edit of my outros through the year to the point where I made it. Hopefully. And if I didn't, then you'll probably never see me again, and I might delete this video, which is a win-win. I also wanted to address this one comment that called me Marquez Brownlee. Because look, I don't hate the comparison. Dude's rich and famous. I'd love to be compared to people like that. But I don't see it. Do I look like him? I mean, I don't see it. But you know why I'm bringing this up is because I was showing my sister a video of him using the Apple Vision headphones, right? And then his persona came up, and she said it looked like me. That's enough of that. I might see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Also, maybe it's because I cut my hair. I used to have pretty luscious. I had long hair, and then I had like a middle part, and then I had like this midlife crisis buzz cut, and now I don't know what it is now. So yeah, just let me know. Do I look like Marquez Brownlee?